Now, people have insinuated to me before that I am a bit of an idiot when it comes to buying cars I probably shouldn't. This one right here might just be a prime example of that. This, in Doug DeMuro style, is a 2002 Volkswagen Golf Estate with the 1.9 TDI engine, and even more interestingly, the pre-PD TDI engine. Now, I paid £350 for this thing, and I have been told it's probably £350 too much, because I'm currently about £1,500 into it, and I'm sure there'll be more of a spend to make on it as well. So when we say that the channel name is indeed Tatty Old Cars, I'm literally living up to the expectation of buying tatty old cars. Why did I buy this? For me, I have always loved the Mark IV Volkswagen Golf. I have already had one many years ago. That was a 1.6 litre petrol 5-door hatchback, and I had fond memories of that, doing lots of miles, and that was another kind of high mileage example. Oh, by the way, this has got 168,000 miles. Did I mention that? And they're just a car I'm fairly familiar with and have enjoyed working on. I know a lot of their main faults and a lot of their main issues. However, with this one, I discovered a few more that I wasn't aware of. So a day after I bought the car, do you know what happened? The entire rear axle collapsed. It just snapped.
Well, there you go, folks. There's the problem. The rear suspension armor's torn, snapped.
That's right. I had to replace the rear beam, the rear stub axles, wheel bearings, suspension stuff, springs, shocks, and that was to the tune of about 450 to 500 pounds by the time I was done. I've basically had to put tyres on it all the way round. I've got all of the door locks to do because they all like to fail. I've done one so far, and the rest they just do strange things. You'll unlock it, lock it, the boot won't unlock, sometimes it'll lock and then, oh, you don't know. Had to get the air conditioning done as well on it. I found out it had a great big hole in it as well. As you can see, I've had to have a little smidgen of welding done because beneath the underseal and everything, yeah, there was a big hole and that just wasn't structurally sound, and yeah, it was rusty too. And did I mention that it overheats? It didn't do that on any of the test drives, but it turns out it overheats. That is a problem I've been battling with this thing. You might think it sounds like all bad news, but I believe I've got a little diamond in the rough here. And by the time I'm done with it, it should be a pretty nice car. Certainly by the time I've replaced these rotten wings anyway. So going for a little walk around, we can see that it is in the very common Volkswagen silver colour that pretty much all of the Mark IVs were. Overall, given the wings and stuff, it's actually not in terrible condition. I mean, sure, the wheels are a bit scuffed, but hey, it doesn't matter. It's 21 years old. Yeah, but this is what I mean about the locking situation. We have to go into here. We have to do the thing, and then to make sure the car doesn't relock itself, and then have to immediately open the door again and close it so the car knows the door was open. And then I can do this. But would you look at the space in here? That is some good room for activities. Now, being a self-employed musician-y bloke who also works at computers and has to pick up and drop things off from customers and companies and things like that, having an estate where I can fit a lot of stuff in and is still a comfortable driving car is quite good. Before, I had a little 2008 Mazda 2 hatch, which I loved, but it was just too small. Inside, it's quite a comfy thing. Everything's laid out quite nicely. Control-wise, I fit in here. Adjustable height, reach, rake, all that stuff in the steering wheel. Seats. Interior has worn its miles quite well as far as I'm concerned, other than some of the nasty, sticky plastics. For 168,000 miles, this is the kind of wear you expect. You get these little bits here which like to, happen there and come off. And you get from that nasty scratchiness here. But you know what? Generally, I mean, even this is all kind of original stuff. It's worn quite well. It's a comfy place to be, and even my wife likes being in it. And the fact my wife likes the car, that's a plus, which means she doesn't totally hate me. Even though she doesn't have a window on this side because the window regulator broke and literally just fell to the bottom, and it's currently held up by bits of wood. Yeah, you know how these things are with old Golf life. You know, even the room in the back isn't too terrible. I mean, I'm 6'3" to 4-ish, and I like food, and I still kind of mostly fit behind myself. In fact, I could do an journey in this. And there's headroom still. I've still got headroom. Okay, so I'm pretty sure like all the legroom and stuff is the same as like a 5-door Golf, and it's all the extra junk in the trunk is what you get here with the Estate. But, you know, it's still comfortable enough, and oh, just nice things. Look at that. We've even got these little soft close handles. Oh, how premium. Oh. And would you look at all this room for activities? What activities? I don't know, because I'm far too old for that kind of thing, if you know what I mean. But the activities I can imagine, oh, might be sleeping, that could be nice. All the other activities could be what I did the other day, which is pretty much loading an entire show's worth of PA equipment, guitars, amplifiers and other supporting equipments, lead bags, pedal boards, etc, etc, which this thing just swallowed up very nicely. I've also used it to do some dump runs and just generally carry other things about, and yeah, it's just so good when it's folded back. And here we have it, the business end of things. The 1.9 TDI ASV engine, not the PDAS, as I've said before. I think it's the VE mechanical Bosch injection pump this one has. And yeah, it's been serviced and looked after quite well. It's got a couple of oil leaks, and you know, I'm going to replace some vacuum hoses and things like that, which need to be done just due to age. But other than that, the engine runs really sweet. It doesn't burn any oil, doesn't use any coolant, doesn't smoke, anything like that, which just shows how kind of tough these old VW engines are. And this one is very closely related to the very infamous ALH engine as well. Gearbox on this is also good, and it has 5 speeds. It goes into gear, it isn't noisy, it doesn't whine, anything like that, and yeah. Now it's funny, I am the 3rd owner of this car. The previous 2 owners were actually local, very local indeed. The chap I bought this off I've known for 20 years and is one of my neighbours. And the chap he bought it off is only literally a stone's throw away from where we're filming right now. So it's been a very local car, which is kind of an interesting story as well. In fact, whenever I see the people that previously owned this car and bought it new, I give them a wave, and they always give me a wave whenever I drive by their house. So yeah, it is kind of fun in that regard, and a nice little thing. Okay, well, let's talk about how a Golf, which is about 21 years old, with 168,000 miles drives. For the mileage, the car actually doesn't drive too badly. Touching on some of the fixes I've had to do to the vehicle, so far it's had an entire new rear axle. The only thing with this though, however, is the shock absorbers I've got. I'm not sure if they're overdamped or if they're underdamped, but the issue I have with them is that, I don't know, you go over a small speed bump of some sort, and it's almost like you are throwing your rear passengers, especially, into the ceiling, because, I don't know, it just doesn't control it very well, so I'm probably going to have to replace those with some better ones. Now, the front end itself has a little bit of woolliness. Now, the reason for that is because it has got a worn lower front control arm. The bushes in that have gone. They're not dangerous. They're not going to immediately come out and break the car or anything like that and cause me to have an accident and kill children. But they are worn. You can see it's just aged and cracked, and it hasn't been replaced. And it's something on the list that needs to be done. With that as well, I've got a track rods end, which is a little bit suspect, and I'm going to have to replace that too. Now, the lower front ball joint that is also attached to the lower control arm is a little bit playful as well. Not too bad, nothing dangerous, but you know, when I change that, that'll make a big difference. Also, looking at the front subframe rubber mounts, they do seem to be a little bit worn and perished. Now, I'm thinking of changing that because I can find subframes for about £75 brand new with bushes pressed into them, which doesn't seem like too bad of a deal, and I don't think it's actually massively hard to replace. That'll give me the chance to do things like replace the bushes for the anti-roll bar as well. And with that, it should just tighten things up too. The actual front shocks and springs, I don't know if they're original to the vehicle, but they still feel okay. It doesn't wallow at the front end or bounce around or anything like that. So in that regard, the actual front suspension appears to be behaving itself on the strut and spring combination. Now, it helps on the front as well that I've got a nice set of Avon tyres too. So I am getting good grip because they are kind of mid-range. I think they're AV7 or something like that, but they weren't certainly the cheapest ones I could have bought. And of course, they're certainly not low-profile tyres, so that does help when it comes to soaking up the bumps and things like that. Generally, the steering feel in this thing it's okay. It's hydraulically assisted, which is always nice. And it's one of those steering setups where while you don't really feel 100% what's going on the front wheels through the steering wheel, where you point it, it does tend to go. It's fairly direct enough. It's not a particularly quick rack or anything like that, and it's just generally quite comfortable to drive in that regard. You see, everything in this car is pretty much geared for comfort, which is kind of quite nice. So it's a good kind of long distance road tripper, really. Even though the seats have got a lot of miles on them and this one's collapsed a little bit, I can still get very comfortable in here. I can still drive along all day long with no real worries. All the controls as well are quite nicely laid out. So the gear stick's in a nice place as well. It's got a fair bit of throw. It's not really snickety and kind of like an old bit of machinery like a lot of those car reviewing kind of cliches would say. But it's precise enough. And for the mileage, the actual bushings don't seem worn in the gearbox selector cables at all. So, you know, I wouldn't say it feels any worse than a car with probably half the miles to drive in that regard of a gear change. Speaking of gearbox and clutch, I do have a slight issue actually when I'm pulling away, which is sometimes I get a little bit of a thunk and a little bit of judder coming from kind of like the clutch. I think that's because there is a worn engine or gearbox mount as well, which is something that when we do the front lower arms and all the other suspension bits, we will take a little look at and we will diagnose. It's not that bad at the moment, but you know, it's something obviously I want to pay a bit of attention to. The clutch pedal has about the right weight to it. It's not too light, not too hard. It's easy enough to move. It's easy enough to find the biting point. It's the same with the brakes as well. They're not particularly sharp, and the pedal is hard enough, but I wouldn't call it like a stiff pedal or anything like that. It's kind of got that typical Volkswagen thing of where you do get like some pedal feel at the start, a little bit mushy perhaps, but as you kind of get towards halfway down the pedal where you actually really want it to start stopping, it kind of pulls up fine. It's not like a lot of French cars which are very, very sharp at the top of the pedal and almost throw you into the steering wheel. Same with the progression of the accelerator pedal. It's all very linear, you know, it's not particularly sharp. It's just, yet again, a car that's built for comfort. Now, performance-wise, how is the car? Well, it's a 110 horsepower engine. It's the ASV engine, which is one of the VE, I think it is, mechanical fuel pump. It's a pre-PD engine, as I touched on earlier. However, it does have one of the Achilles heels of some of this era of Golf. Now, the previous two owners of this car were older chaps, and they didn't really rag it or drive it hard. And the issue with this is that this car has a VNT turbo. Now, what does that mean in layman's terms? It means that it can adjust its boost pressure and the way the power is being delivered with a little actuator that's run via vacuum. And what happens is that actuator can get gummed up, or the turbo itself can get gummed up, and you lead to an overboost situation. And what will happen then is you're driving down the road, you put your foot down, and occasionally you'll just lose all power. The car will go and just fall on its face, and you'll have no boost. But weirdly, it has no check engine light, and it goes away if you restart the car. Something I have been doing in these situations is very quickly flicking the key from on to off and then back to on again. And that's kind of helped as a quick fix to get your power back. However, I will probably need to do some diagnosis on this, perhaps take the turbo off, perhaps get it reconditioned, or buy an exchange unit. A reconditioned turbo, when you put yours in with the exchange as well, is about £200 for a genuine unit that's been rebuilt. And that's not really a lot of money. Perhaps in the grand scheme of things, when this was a £350 car, but I'm just one of those people that can't stand suspension knocks, and I can't stand mechanical issues where it affects the car's running and driving. So I kind of fix them. I always do. That's why I'm very rubbish at Bangonomics, because I can't just leave things be. But the thing about it is it's still actually very usable. Most of the time, let's be honest with you, you're sitting there for about up to 2,500, 3,000 RPM before you change. I mean, I'm in second now, 2.5 into third, 30, 2 grand into fourth, and we're still, you know, just around 30 here, should I say. And it's still got enough kind of get up and go in that lower rev range where I can see why the previous owners didn't really have to rev it out. And it's one of those things, I didn't actually notice that the car had a problem like this until I started driving it hard and wanted to do a bit of overtaking and things like that. And I was kind of like, oh, this is weird. And that took me about 2 weeks to find that issue, because that's how much I was just kind of driving it around, trying to get some good fuel economy. Now, speaking of fuel economy, what do I get out of this thing? So I don't tend to see any less than about 38 round town. If I was doing literally a very short, like under a mile journey, you know, engine's not even fully warmed up, then I'll probably be in the 35 range. But on a run right now, on this little run we're doing here, I'm currently sitting about 45 miles per gallon, and that's a mix of kind of 40 to 60 roads, not constant speeds. And yeah, that's generally where that tends to sit. Most of the time I might get up to 48 if I'm really, really babying it. On a longer run, you're looking from anywhere from 55 to 65 miles per gallon. 65 miles per gallon is a real push, but mostly it will achieve 60 miles per gallon if you're between 60 and 70 and just driving steadily. Now, speaking about performance and driving the vehicle a little bit harder, it did actually unearth some problems to me. Now, when I first got the car, it had a slightly stuck open thermostat. And then I wanted to fix that, because of course that's what I do. I embarked on a journey that so far has involved 3 thermostats, several different ways of trying to bleed the system, flushing the system through on several occasions, and I still have a mild overheating issue. Now, touching on the overheating issue that I talked about at the beginning of the video, it's quite a strange one. I believe I have just got some air trapped in this. I'm not sure if I've got a slightly clogged heater core or if I just haven't been able to bleed it fully, but I'm taking some more actions to get the car performing correctly. Now, the main issue I'll have is over certain roads, especially if they are kind of very windy and twisty, a lot of elevations and the car's going up and down and things are getting juggled about. The car will actually start creeping up in temperature and the heaters will blow cold. And it's very strange. I can get the temperature to come back down if I dip my foot on the clutch and do something like this. Rev it at 4,000 RPM, and then what will happen is the heat will suddenly come back and the temperature goes down, which leads me to believe I've just got an airlock somewhere. Now, this is where I think the airlock is happening, which is this back kind of coolant distribution area on the side of the head. Now, that sends coolant up to the heater matrix, where I actually put a little bleeder in to try and bleed some of the air out. But it's also got the temperature sensor there as well. And obviously, if water isn't getting up these hoses and flowing in this area, it's probably not going to be able to accurately get the temperature. I don't know, that's the theory I'm working on. So to be sure, because some of the water that came out of the radiator was quite dirty, I bought a brand new radiator. It was about £46 delivered, which isn't a massive amount. I've bought a vacuum filling and bleeding system, which I'm going to try, and hopefully that will get rid of whatever air is in the system. I'm also going to wash through again and pre-fill the heater matrix. I might try and put some compressor air or something through it first, just to make sure if there is something stuck, backflow it, front flow it, just if there's anything stuck in there, it can come out, and just make sure everything is pre-filled. I was quite worried at first that it might be a head gasket issue, but fortunately it seems like it's not, because I'm not actually losing any coolant. If anybody else has ever had any experience with this on any of these TDI engines, it would be nice to know if you had a similar thing and how you fixed it. But you know, that'll be another video for another day. But for the most part, however, the car actually drives fine and it doesn't overheat unless you're really just hammering it up a hill or you're going through some strange twisty roads at some speed. It's been reliable enough that I've done several longer journeys now, just poodling along. Temperature hasn't creeped up once. But the fact I know that there is an issue bugs me, and I've got to do something about it. So those main issues of the suspension, the heating, the cooling, the turbo aside, how does the car actually drive when you stick it into a back road and you want to have a little bit of fun with it? So we're now approaching a national speed limit. So in fourth, foot down, that's 55, and that's 60. Okay, so as I said, even without getting really full into the rev range, you still got a bit of decent low down pull. And we're approaching a little corner here, and how does it feel? Well, it feels a little bit like you're piloting a ship. The weird thing is even though you're kind of rolling over in the corners a little bit, it still feels very controlled, and it's very predictable. It's got that typical front wheel drive handling, especially with diesel engines, where, you know, it'll kind of tell you if you're on the limit a bit, because you'll start feeling the tyres just a bit wanting to wash. But to be honest, if you're really driving this car into corners at that speed, you're kind of driving it wrong. It's not really what it's designed for. Now, of course, you can get some upgrades for it. You can get TT front roll bars, you could put stiffer shocks and springs on it. But for me, that's not something I'm going to do. Because this is just going to be a really nice, reliable daily driver. Into third, into the corner, and you can just start to feel the steering going a teensy little bit light. Same again, let's go into here, this corner here, and I mean, yeah, you can just feel it kind of doing that front wheel drive, kind of scurrying, scrabbling away at the front wheels. But it's fine, it's safe and predictable. There's more than enough grip, mechanically of course, and there's more than enough grip to have enough enjoyment at kind of a sensible speed. But would I say it's a get your heart racing car? No, of course it's not. It's not designed to be that. Okay, so we're going back into a 60 now, and one of my favourite bits of road. In fact, a fun fact is this was the first ever bit of road I ever drove. When I was learning to drive all the way back in 2008, this road links my father's house to our place of work. And yeah, I have to say, as far as driving roads go and somewhere to experience your first time in a car on the road, it's not a bad bit of road to do it on. It has some lovely twists and lovely curves, and it's just lovely. This is also the road that upsets the car a little bit. So I've got my foot down in fourth a little bit, into fifth, and I'm now letting off the accelerator, and it's pretty much just cruising about. And we're just letting the car go round some of these corners and sweeping bends. And it's usually up here I start to get a bit of an issue with the kind of the overheating. And would you look at that? It seems like clockwork. Every time on this bit of road at the exact place, the temperature gauge creeps up. And it's gone to probably about 100 now. And I bet you the heaters won't be warm. No, there's no real warmth in there. So which is what makes me think it's an airlock. Now, letting off and doing my rev thing, yep, that's just brought the temperature down straight away as the water pump is then moving and bringing air and bringing water through again. So let's pull in and let's close this video out. So that was the official introduction to the Golf. It doesn't have a name yet. I don't name every car. I'm not sure if it deserves a name yet, but if you in the comments section have a good name for the car, do let me know, and maybe it will become the official name of the Golf. So overall, if you hit that subscribe button, what you have to look forward to are not only more Maestro videos, don't worry, we haven't forgot about the Maestro, and there is jobs we need to do to that, and I have got an update video on that coming very soon. You will also see videos of me working on the car. We're going to do the cooling system, we're going to go through that, we're going to do the suspension stuff, probably do the wings when that happens, and other little odds and sods and bits and bobs and jobs that need doing. And if there's anything specifically more that you'd like to see about the car, do let me know, and maybe I'll make a video on it. So other than that, let me know your thoughts below in the comments section. Any things that you'd have to say about it, or just any comments in general, or letting me know if I was an absolute idiot for buying it. And typically somebody's going to come by and drive by in the shop now, which is always fun to do. That person has a really nice Passat estate. I probably should have bought that, to be fair, or something very similar, but they probably paid a lot more than I did. Anyway, as always, my name is William. This is Tatty Old Cars, and if you want to see more of this rubbish, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Not sure what I'm doing with my hands here, but hey, there you go.
I'm the king of rusty old Volkswagens.